Wanted to talk to Pat Forde, one of the great college football writers in America. He works for Yahoo Sports, and I wasn't sure which situation is more dire. And I know it's only a couple of weeks into the season, but Texas with what happened against BYU and the expectation level at Texas as opposed to USC losing at home to Washington State. Where do you want to start there, Pat?
They're both equal five-alarm blazes, I would say. So, but let's start with USC and Washington State because, I mean, at least Mac Brown has done something to curry, the good favor and good graces of the fan base and his employers over 15 years. But Lane Kiffin really hasn't done much of that. And what stunned me after seeing the result of that, I looked up the recruiting rankings, Dan, for the last 4 years for the schools. USC's class is averaged fifth best in the country. Washington State's 67th. I think USC might have a little more talent and a little less coaching.
Okay, but what happened here? I know at the end of last year should have been the warning signs. They lost, 5 of their last 6. They lost to Georgia Tech in the Sun Bowl. But this was a new season, although they can't decide on a quarterback. You got Marquise Lee, who should have gone to the NFL, or at least he probably wishes he could have been able to. But you got this team, and you say, all right, what's missing here? There's a disconnect.
There is. I mean, look, their quarterbacks are horrible. And Kiffin hasn't coached them very well. They were highly recruited guys, but when Matt Barkley got hurt last year, of course, Barkley didn't have a great season last year, and their offensive line was not very good, and he got beat up a little bit. But when he got hurt and went out last year, I mean, they were inept offensively against Notre Dame and in their bowl game, and that's carried over to this year. And, Kiffin he hasn't developed any quarterbacks or much of anybody on offense. I mean, Marquise Lee would have been a superstar no matter where he played. Just because he went to USC doesn't mean Lane Kiffin's coached him well. It's just Lane Kiffin never should have gotten the job to begin with. That's what really is the problem. He was never qualified to be the USC head coach, and why he became it is becoming a greater mystery all the time.
Which one can get fired during the season?
I don't think either. I mean, there's no way that's going to happen to Mac Brown. He's got the backing of the president and athletic director there, at least until the season is over. He's always had it, and he has insisted he will have it, but things are changing rapidly. And I just don't see Pat Hayden doing that either. Hayden came out with the 100% behind Kiffin thing in the offseason, but what else is he supposed to say in July? But Hayden's not the kind of guy to trapdoor coach during the season.
No, I don't think so, and I applaud him for doing that. But at some point, you have to be fair to those kids that you have recruited as student athletes. Are you being fair to them? With having Lane Kiffin still coaching them. We're talking to Pat Forde from Yahoo Sports. As far as the Texas situation, is this an aberration? I mean, they lose to BYU. Obviously, an ugly way to lose to BYU. But is this something that the calm before the storm here?
Yeah, I don't think it's an aberration at all. I mean, you give up 550 rushing yards to BYU.
You can't do that accidentally. That's right.
Yeah, no, that's not a fluke circumstance. That is being punched in the face repeatedly until you are face down on the floor. And it looked like what happened against Oklahoma the last 2 years. And I know this from talking to Texas fans. The one thing they just cannot tolerate is to be demolished by Oklahoma again. And it looks like it'll happen, barring a miracle with Greg Robinson taking over as defensive coordinator. And Greg Robinson hadn't been a very good defensive coordinator lately.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
They got trouble.
If you're looking at crystal ball here, looking at USC and their schedule of, are we carving out a 9-win season? Is that still possible here?
No. I mean, look, if you lose to Washington State,
I know.
Washington State's bad.
I know.
Bad. I mean, they can maybe beat Boston College, maybe beat Utah State, but then Arizona State looks good. Arizona looks good at Notre Dame. Utah is 2-0.
Stanford.
Even Colorado's 2-0 at this point.
Yeah.
They're going to lose a lot of games.
Will they have a 500 record?
I'd say at best 6-6. That's as good as you can do.
Can we start the hype already for A&M and Alabama? And don't you love Johnny Manziel saying it just feels like the third week of the season? Like, yeah, you're playing Alabama. Yeah, it feels like the third week of the season.
Yeah, how about that? I know. And that, you expect that. I was hoping for more from Johnny since we haven't, we hear from him very sporadically. But I talked to the Alabama players after their opener, and they were off last week, and you got the cyborg routine from them, but that's what you expect because they're coached by Nick Saban. It's just another game, blah blah blah. Trust me. I mean, they have had this game playing in their weight room. I know that on video all summer. It's a revenge game. Saban is really good in revenge games. I think A&M better strap it on tight.
Wait, so Alabama working out in the offseason, lifting weights, and they played the A&M game on a loop on all the monitors?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Everywhere in the weight room all summer. But it's not a revenge game. It's just another game.
No, not at all. Is Manziel better than last year? Can we tell that yet?
Too early to tell. I think, off of less than, 5 quarters of play, basically 2 against Rice and 3 against Sam Houston. I mean, he looks great so far. And I'll give him credit for having jet-set it around the country and done everything he's done and been involved in everything he's been involved in. It does not appear to have taken away from his football at all. But we'll see against Alabama. I mean, that'll be the true test. And he was great in that game last year, but I think Alabama was sore, flat, and shell-shocked for the first quarter and a half of that game, and they won't be this time around.
Yeah, I thought that it took them a half to really realize what they should have been doing defensively. And, they were banged up from the previous game, I think, going into that one. And then all of a sudden, Manziel, you look like a video game guy against them. And, you give Saban this amount of time. There's not many coaches you can say that about, but I can say that about Saban, that the game plan will be a whole lot better. And, people look at that defense and say that might be the best defense he's ever had there.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. They will be 100% prepared, and they looked 100% nasty against Virginia Tech. The Virginia Tech broke one long run, and that was really the only offense they were able to sustain. So it's going to be a great match, but a real premium on Manziel's athleticism and improvisational ability, because I guarantee he's going to be running for his life on several occasions.
The second best game this weekend in college football is what?
I've been so focused on this game, I'm not sure I know. I haven't paid any attention. I guess you could say that Tennessee going to play Oregon because Tennessee's 2-0, but I think they're going to get trampled just because they're 2-0 doesn't prove much of anything to me. They've still got some more.
I'm going to Stanford and Army.
Well, great. You'll see more future leaders of men, I think, than I will, perhaps. But I'll take my game over yours.
The Jadeveon Clowney coverage now, that he's starting to get picked apart. I think he's realizing once they put you up on that pedestal, it's a better story when they start to tear you down here. What do you make of the Clowney coverage? Yeah,
and I was there Saturday, and Georgia just ran away from him all game. I mean, that's all they did. And then North Carolina did the same thing, although it was interesting. I saw from one of the people that cover South Carolina that he has 6 tackles and 1 sack through 2 games, which was the exact numbers he had last year when nobody was, saying what's wrong with Jadeveon Clowney. But he's frustrated. He said afterwards, I talked to the coaches and I said, put me, where I can help, put me where I can do some things. And, I think there's a lot of frustration on that team right now. There were 2 defensive coaches that got into a shoving match on the sideline during the game. That's the way it is in the SEC. When things go wrong, it becomes a big, big deal, maybe a blown out of proportion deal.
Before I let you go, Michigan and Notre Dame, we had Brady Hoke on Friday, and I said, does this come down to money? Is that why you're not? And, he was talking about that Notre Dame has these other built-in rivalries, but still, it felt like, there's something missing here as to the reason why they won't continue this rivalry. Why is it?
I think the simple reason is that Notre Dame would prefer to play easier games than Michigan. If you're going to keep playing Purdue and Michigan State, well, yeah, you have a better chance of winning those games historically. And, I think they really want to play, obviously USC and Stanford because it keeps them playing a game in California every year. They like to play an Oklahoma or somebody like that gives them a chance to get into the Texas area. So I think they look at Michigan as somewhat expendable in terms of recruiting territory, and that's why the game had to go, and I think it's a darn shame.
Safe travels to the A&M Alabama game. We'll check in with you later. We appreciate it, Pat.
All right, Dan, thank you.
Pat Forde, Yahoo Sports National College Football writer. Had some strong opinions there.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.